Vote will be a strong force come May 2022, with over half of all voters comprised of young Filipinos. Youth leaders and advocates are finding ways to help educate our Kababayans. Some are through inspiring stories like our guest tonight, Sachi Lozano, from the nonprofit publication, The Adversity Archive. Sachi, thank you so much for joining us. You are the editor-in-chief of this publication, and you are now eligible to vote in next year's election. How important is the May 2022 elections for the youth of today?
Oh, I think it's very important, especially, given the recent events that have been unfolding. And, for me, watching, with the recent anniversary of the declaration of martial law, and it's really got me thinking. And I think it's interesting that in 2021, we seem to be experiencing very similar patterns of media censorship, of corruption, of abuses of power, of extrajudicial killings. I mean, the list really goes on. And I think the 2022 elections are so important because they're going to dictate whether or not we, allow these patterns, these alarming patterns to continue, and whether we as a nation have, the 2022 elections are going to be indicative of whether we as a nation have learned from our history. I think also, for my generation specifically, the 2022 elections are so important, not only because it's our future at stake, but as you said, many of us have come of age where we actually can take charge of our future and we have a say. So I do think
Yes,
the 2022
indeed.
elections.
You have a say, but many of the youth of today, Sachi, still are undecided on who they will vote for. And there are several candidates for president and vice president. What is the youth looking for in their leaders of the future?
Well, Sir Rico, I can only really speak for the people that I've gotten to, speak with and converse with. But I really think that my generation is one that's very aware of what's going on and very adamant about creating change. So I will say that the youth, based on who I've spoken to, is really looking for a leader that's honest and compassionate and who has integrity and is also going to, I think, reinstate dignity to the office.
You founded the Adversity Archive more than a year and a half ago. What led you to start this subscription platform?
So the Adversity Archive subscription platform is the way that we give our readers the opportunity to actually act upon what they're reading about. Because we don't want to just, leave these articles and these stories for people to reflect. We want them to actually translate these reflections into practical action. So when you subscribe to the Adversity Archive, you're essentially contributing the 100 pesos, which is your subscription fee, to the very communities you read about. So yeah, that's really, we wanted to change just reflections and conversations into practical action. That's why we started the subscription platform.
And over the past year and a half, what has really hit you? What has what chord has really hit you in the many stories that have been written by you and the many volunteers that have joined the Adversity Archive?
Oh man, there's so many, but I think, the one, the most recent one that struck with me is we got to work with a fisherfolk community in Puerto Princesa. And I met Ate Maria Fe, who's the wife of a fisherman. And she was really telling me about the difficulties of depending on a livelihood that's so riddled with uncertainty. I mean, between fluctuating prices for fish, the changing weather patterns, and the ongoing crisis with the West Philippine Sea. And now, the pandemic adds another layer of uncertainty. And, despite all of that, she told me how she and her husband, they just try to keep the positivity alive by really giving back to their community. So they lend money so that members of their community can eat. They've even distributed food so that their community can just stay afloat. And that was so memorable and inspiring to me because it really contrasts, what we're seeing unfold in the media with all this money and being shelled out and wasted. And then you see these two people who have barely enough to survive, are surviving on the bare minimum. And yet they find it in themselves to give. And I think it really just highlights and really underscores that the good of this nation is still very much found in its people, and people like Ate Maria Fe, sorry.
All the best Sachi, with the Adversity Archive and all the volunteers of the organization. And congratulations for launching this initiative. Sachi Lozano, the founder and editor-in-chief of Adversity Archive.